combat the risk.
Yes. So as you can see, my title of my paper is Conditional Conservatism in Islamic Banks during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this paper is conducted by me, that is Zuhair Barham Zaid from Palestine Technical University in Palestine. In the first slide, I show the problem that I deal with and the question. And the problem can be divided from the agency theory, the well-known theory. And this theory assume conflicts of interest between owners and managers in corporations where the ownership is separated. So in this theory, managers are expected to behave opportunistically to maximize their own utilities at the expense of other parties. And past research provide evidence that conditional conservatism can play an important role in mitigating the opportunistic behavior of managers and agency problem as well. Research, actually, I have reviewed research on this area, and I found that research did not consider conditional conservatism in Islamic banks during the pandemic. So I think this is a gap. This is the gap of my research. So my question is, what is the level of conditional conservatism in Islamic banks during the COVID-19 pandemic? The importance of my research is coming from these points. At the first, conditional conservatism and Islamic banks are vital issues as they play an important role in mitigating the opportunistic behavior of managers. They are supposed to play this role. Research on the COVID-19 crisis in the financial sector is rare as well. Findings of this paper are expected to enrich the literature on conditional conservatism in Islamic banks and the outcomes or the economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the last point, I show that result of this paper might benefit decision makers knowing that conditional conservatism experienced in Islamic bank during the pandemic. Okay, let's move to importance. Here I show the hypothesis development, how I develop my hypothesis. We can see that the Islamic religion and other religions as well have a positive connection with ethical norms and helping others. And Islamic religion and other religions as well have a negative relation with the opportunistic behavior of managers. And past research prove a negative relationship between the opportunistic behavior of managers and conditional conservatism. So, if Islamic religion will reduce the opportunistic behavior of managers, so as a result, Islamic religion is expected to increase the level of conditional conservatism, because conditional conservatism and earnings management are different. And on the other hand, we can see that crisis, as past research provide strong evidence on this relation, crises have a positive relationship with risk. As we know, crisis can be considered as a risk environment for risk. And in risk, litigation among shareholders is increased during crisis. And according to Watts 2003, he explained that litigation and the increase of litigation would increase the level or would increase the demand for conditional conservatism as well. So we can see that both Islamic banks, among other religions, and the crisis lead to an increase in the level of conditional conservatism. So this is my hypothesis. My hypothesis states that conditional conservatism is significantly increased in Islamic banks during the COVID-19 pandemic. The research model, we can see the dependent variable, that is conditional conservatism, and the independent variables. The independent variable in my paper is one variable, that is COVID-19, and we have other independent variables as control variables, that is size and market to book value ratio and leverage. And I expect a positive relationship between COVID-19 and conditional conservatism. The research model equation is presented in this slide. We can see that the dependent variable is C-score, and this C-score is the measurement of conditional conservatism as suggested by Khan and Watts 2009. And we can see our interested variable, that is CO19. This is a dummy variable that equals 1 for 2020 and 0 for 2019. Size as a control variable is the nature logarithm of firm's equity market value. Market to book value is the ratio of market to book value. LEV is the liabilities divided by the market value of the equity. The coefficient beta 1 can determine the level of conditional conservatism during the pandemic. If this coefficient is significant and positive, so we can conclude that the COVID pandemic increased the level of conditional conservatism measured by C-score. Data. I collect data from the Arabian Gulf countries. We can see we have 6 countries: Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and the number of Islamic banks is 30 banks, and most of these banks comes from United Arab Emirates, which are 10 banks. And we have the observations. Of course, we have observations from 2019 and 2020. So the total observations for all the sample is 60 observations. Table 2 present the statistics starting from the mean, standard deviation, the minimum value, medium, and maximum. Okay, the main results of my paper is as follows. We can see that our interest variable, COVID-19, the coefficient of this variable is 5.0166, and this coefficient is significant at less than 1%. So we can conclude that conditional conservatism is increased significantly during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we can see that our model is fit and is significant, as the F statistic is significant, as the p-value of F statistic is almost 0. Actually, I conducted another test based on PASO 1997, and this is the additional results. We can see that this coefficient related to COVID DR, the coefficient is positive and significant and less than 5%. This coefficient is 2.1517, and we can see it is significant and less than 5%, as its p-value is 0.025. And the model is fit as well, because the probability of F statistic is almost 0. Okay, the conclusion and the summary of this paper. This paper aimed to explore the level of conditional conservatism in Islamic banks during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the method, I use a sample of 60 firm year observations, and the period covers the years from 2019 to 2020. And I use in this method the C-score developed by Khan and Watts 2009, and I find a significant increase in the level of conditional conservatism in Islamic banks during the pandemic. My contributions is that this paper is expected to cover the gap. As I mentioned before, I did not find any paper handle this topic during the pandemic. So my results might enrich the literature on conditional conservatism in accounting literature and Islamic banks and the economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. Another contribution or impractical issue of this paper, policymakers and decision makers might benefit from the results of this paper, as I find in this paper, conditional conservatism is increased in Islamic banks during the pandemic, and as past research proved that conditional conservatism can eliminate the agency problem. So shareholders in Islamic banks, I can tell them a message that their investment in Islamic banks is a good decision, because Islamic banks experience conditional conservatism as a governance tool during the pandemic. Of course, as every paper, my paper has some limitations. Actually, I handle the conditional form of accounting conservatism. The unconditional form of accounting conservatism is not explored in this paper. Second, the sample is only from the Arabian Gulf countries, so the generalization of my results may be limited to this region. So this is my presentation of my paper. Thank you for your listening. You may ask me some questions or tell me some recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So indeed, we do have one question, Dr. Zuhair. Do the banking facilities granted by banks affect the amount of risks that banks are exposed to in light of the pandemic?
I didn't understand you.
I'm going to repeat. He did write it on the chat box. Do the banking facilities granted by banks affect the amount of risks that banks are exposed to during the pandemic?
Affect the amount of risk. Actually, I did not deal with risk in my paper. I didn't measure the risk in my paper, so no information about this question, because risk is not measured in my paper. I just measure the level of conditional conservatism in Islamic banks.
Dr. Zuhair, how did you measure? I mean, you mentioned the reference for the conditional conservatism, and you said it's a score. But what are the elements of that score?
Okay, I did measure my variable, that is conditional conservatism, by using the Khan and Watts 2019. That is the C-score. This is my measurement.
But what are the items in the C-score? I mean, definitely C-score is not available, right?
Yes.
You calculated this.
Okay, I can show you. I can open the paper, because it has some details.
No, just out of curiosity, I wanted to understand how they are measuring the conditional conservatism.
Okay. At the first, we Khan and Watts used the PASO 1997 model, and based on this model, they argue that conditional conservatism is connected with firm characteristics, the size, leverage, and market to book value. They put these variables, the firm characteristics, size, leverage, and market to book value, into the model of PASO 1997. And after this, they estimate four coefficients: lambda 1, lambda 2, lambda 3, and lambda 4. And they use these lambdas, these four lambdas, in an equation, and from that equation, they calculate the C-score for every firm. I can show you this in the paper if you want.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So mainly the variables used to calculate the score are the same one that you use in your equation.
Yes.
Which are size, market to book, and the leverage.
Yes.
And they are defined in the same way. Size is measured at the market value as a log of equity.
Yes. But these three variables are entered into another model, that is PASO 1997. This model is based on two variables mainly. The first variable is earnings, and the other variable is return, and with another dummy variables.
Okay, and based on your finding, the conditional conservatism did increase during the pandemic. So is it something good? Is it something bad?
Yes, it is good, because conditional conservatism can be described as a governance rule to mitigate the opportunistic behavior of managers. As the
So
agency,
any theoretical explanation for that? I mean, why would banks increase their conditional conservatism only during crisis?
because of risk. According to us 2003, he explained that during crisis and during risk, users actually demand more conservatism in financial reporting. Because
Okay.
why? Because conditional conservatism, through it, the company can send messages to users, useful messages, useful information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Dr. Zuhair. Anyone else has any questions for Dr. Zuhair for his presentation? I guess no more question. Let me just make sure that the fifth paper presenters are still not here before I conclude the session. So, cyclicality as a manifestation of the volatility of economic system at the sectoral level. Anyone is here to present that paper? I think no one is here, because I have been calling for that paper for more than a few times, and I'm not able to see the name associated to any of the co-authors. So I think I will end it up here. Thank you all for the presentation, and I hope that you will enjoy the other remaining sessions. So have a nice day, all of you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.